Have you ever heard of the Septuagint? This ancient text has shaped our understanding of the Bible and profoundly influenced Western thought. Shrouded in mystery and controversy, the Septuagint is viewed by some as a powerful and even dangerous text. But what makes this document so unique? And why has it been seen as a threat by certain institutions throughout history? In this video, we'll explore what the Septuagint truly is, why it was created, and how it became one of the most impactful texts of all time. Additionally, we'll examine how its translations spurred debates and conflicts, challenging traditional beliefs about Scripture. Are you ready to learn about a book some would rather keep hidden? The story of the Septuagint is fascinating and filled with twists and turns. By the end of this video, you'll understand why it still sparks controversy today. Some people regard it as the most dangerous book in the world, due to its ability to question established beliefs. The Septuagint, often referred to simply as LXX, is one of the most significant works in the history of religious thought and translation. It is the first known translation of the Hebrew Scriptures into Greek, undertaken around the 3rd and 2nd centuries BCE in Alexandria, Egypt. This translation played a central role not only in the development of early Christianity, but also profoundly influenced Greek-speaking Jewish communities. During the Hellenistic period, following the conquests of Alexander the Great, Greek became the lingua franca throughout much of the Eastern Mediterranean. Alexandria's Jewish community, one of the largest and most influential in the Jewish diaspora, was deeply immersed in Hellenic culture. Over time, many Jews began to lose their connection to the Hebrew language, especially younger generations who primarily spoke Greek. This shift created an increasing need to make the Scriptures accessible in this new language. As Christianity spread, the need to translate the Scriptures into other languages grew. The Septuagint was a key translation, encompassing not only the books we now recognize as part of the Old Testament, but also other Jewish texts considered apocryphal or deuterocanonical. This translation of the Hebrew Bible into Greek, carried out in Alexandria around the 3rd century BCE, was significant not only for Greek-speaking Jews, but also because it was widely quoted by the apostles and early Christians, forming a bridge between Jewish and Christian traditions. Legend holds that 72 Hebrew sages, 6 from each tribe of Israel, undertook this monumental task. Hence the name Septuagint, meaning 70, in reference to the translators. It's believed that the first 5 books, the Torah, were translated around the 2nd century BCE, likely in Alexandria, which hosted a large Jewish community. According to tradition, Ptolemy II, pharaoh of Egypt, summoned these sages from Israel to translate the Hebrew Scriptures into Greek to include them in the famous Library of Alexandria. Now, let's dive into the details of this translation and its impact on theology and Western history. The Hebrew Bible was translated into Greek in the 3rd century BCE, resulting in the creation of the famous Septuagint. At that time, Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek were widely spoken among Jews. To make the Scriptures more accessible, translations began to emerge, with the Septuagint being among the most important, as it adapted the sacred text into Greek, a language widely understood by the Jewish community of the time. The story of this translation is recounted in various ancient sources, such as the Letter of Aristeas, which describes how translators were sent from Jerusalem to Alexandria. Authors like Flavius Josephus and Philo of Alexandria also recount this legend, reinforcing the almost miraculous nature of the process. According to tradition, the translators, though working in separate chambers, produced identical versions, which many believed was a sign of divine intervention. Over the centuries, the Septuagint gained popularity, particularly among Christians, who used it as the basis for many of their scripture quotations. However, some rabbis began to view this translation with suspicion, arguing that the Greek text altered the original meaning of the scriptures, making it unsuitable for religious use in synagogues. Although the Septuagint became one of the most important translations of the Hebrew Bible, it also raised historical and theological questions. One example is the assumption that the 12 tribes of Israel were still intact at the time of the translation, even though some had been dispersed centuries earlier. Despite this, the translation remained a pivotal step in the spread of scripture and religious understanding of that era. The Septuagint, an ancient translation of Jewish scriptures into Greek, has been surrounded by debate and interpretation over the centuries. Despite its significant relevance, some scholars dismiss Aristeas's account, which claimed divine authorship of the translation, as a devotional legend. Instead, it's believed that the name Septuagint, meaning 70, emerged because the original version was revised and approved by the Jewish Sanhedrin in Alexandria. This translation became especially meaningful to the Jews of Alexandria, who celebrated its completion with an annual festival on the island of Pharos, home to the famous lighthouse of Alexandria. The Septuagint was translated into ancient Greek, retaining elements from Semitic languages like Hebrew and Aramaic, particularly in idiomatic expressions and phrases. However, books like Daniel and Proverbs show a more evident Greek influence. The Septuagint is also a valuable tool for understanding the pronunciation of ancient Hebrew, as many names were transcribed into Greek with their vowels, which didn't exist in Hebrew texts of the time, which lacked vowel signs. However, not all biblical Hebrew sounds had exact Greek equivalents, which led to some adaptations. Contrary to what many believe, the Septuagint is not a unified work. It is a collection of ancient translations of the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, and other Jewish texts now considered apocryphal. These texts were translated by different people in various places and times, using different Hebrew manuscripts, resulting in substantial differences between the Septuagint and the Masoretic text, the standard version of Rabbinic Judaism, while the Hebrew Bible, or Tanakh, is divided into three parts: Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. The Septuagint is organized into four categories: law, history, poetry, and prophets. Additionally, it includes the Apocrypha in designated sections. Scholars, however, debate whether the original Septuagint contained all these texts, many of which are called deuterocanonical, such as 1 and 2 Maccabees, Tobit, Judith, and others. Some later copies of the Septuagint, dating to the 4th century, include books not part of the Jewish canon, like the Psalms of Solomon, 3 and 4 Maccabees, and Psalm 151. These additions and differences led to the Septuagint being rejected by Rabbinic Judaism, primarily because, in various instances, it significantly diverges from the original Hebrew texts, as in the case of the Book of Job, which presents notable differences from the Hebrew Bible. The translation of the Hebrew Bible into Greek, known as the Septuagint, played a crucial role in Christianity's development, but also introduced significant challenges, particularly in terms of translating Hebrew idiomatic expressions. An example is Isaiah 7:14, where the word Alma, meaning young woman, was translated into Greek as Parthenos, meaning virgin. This small detail profoundly influenced Christian theology for centuries. The Septuagint became the official Old Testament for many Christians, especially in Catholic and Orthodox churches. These groups included additional books, known as the Apocrypha, which are not present in the Jewish canon. On the other hand, Protestants, following the Reformation, decided to follow the Jewish canon, excluding these texts. These differences resulted in important theological and doctrinal variations between Christian traditions. The translation of the Septuagint was influenced by Greek culture and its linguistic nuances, which altered the meaning of some Hebrew terms. Additionally, more abstract Jewish concepts may have been adapted to fit the Greek mindset, creating discrepancies with the original Hebrew text, which later became the Masoretic text, the official version of Scripture in Judaism. While Jews began to consider the Septuagint less authoritative, early Christians embraced it widely, especially among Greek-speaking communities. This difference in the perception of the Septuagint's authority between Jews and Christians sparked controversies, as the Greek version presents textual and theological variations from the Hebrew tradition. These differences had a profound impact, especially on interpretations of messianic prophecies and the development of Christian doctrines. If you enjoyed this topic or learned something new, subscribe to our channel and see you soon. May God bless you abundantly.